So we're here today to talk about operating system deployment and migration planning. One of the biggest problems that I see with operating system deployment is that people don't understand what goes into the image, what goes into the deployment process, and the biggest question we have industry-wide is, how do I comfortably and consistently grab my data without affecting my end user's performance? So the first piece we're going to look at is what constitutes the managed desktop solution. This is not a new concept. We've been doing this manually for years, and then the advent of SMS and SCCM and operating system deployment and MDT, we've been able to migrate this, but the underlying principles are still the same, such as we have our user settings, individual applications, role-based applications, enterprise applications, security configurations, hardware-based software and drivers, and operating system master images. Each of these components individually come together to make up the managed desktop solution that the end user will see. So first off, for our user settings, we have to do profile management. Profile management consists of the user settings, the wonderful components that make their profile their own. So how do we grab those without corrupting them? How do we not have to perform the nuclear option, which is delete the profile if there's corruption? That's a huge step in migrating your data and your users to a new platform. The next component is applications, individual, role-based, and enterprise applications. An enterprise application consists of an application that is installed on everybody's computer, regardless of who you are, from the lowliest person in the mailroom up to the CEO. We now have role-based applications where those are departmental applications. Those live on people who have a specific and defined role in the company. The next is individualized applications where you may have certain people that have individual or specific one-off tasks, whether you are the admin to the CEO or you are somebody in accounting that handles a very special client where you need only one type of software or one piece of software to handle that role. The next is a very important component nowadays with all the data breaches with Sony and every other company that's out there. Security management. How do we best lock down the machine and protect the user from themselves without compromising the end user experience? Our users love to think that they're special, they're unique, and they can do anything they need on their computers. Our job is to perpetuate that feeling. However, we need to make sure that we apply good corporate governance and that we lock the machine down to prevent them from harming themselves. One piece of the migration which is very important to me is hardware drivers. There's a magical sound that happens whenever the operating system boots up and you hear it. Microsoft has spent countless amounts of money making that sound wonderful, and the first time I heard this in a mass migration, I got annoyed by it. And then I realized it's a sign of a successful deployment, and you only get that by managing your hardware drivers effectively. Blue screens, audio problems, display problems, all of those components are easily managed by drivers. If you don't know what goes into your hardware driver library, you don't know what's going to come out, you don't know what's being deployed to your machine. So this is another important element to want to focus on for deployment. And most importantly, our operating system master image. What goes into it? Should it be thin? Should it be fat? We're going to talk about that in a couple minutes here. So let's get into the basics of what every deployment process is made out of. And that's called image engineering. Image engineering comprises your image itself, not to be confused with your deployment process. Whenever we start a project at PLA, we talk about what can't be done with our clients. They always come back, I can't do this, I can't do that. And if we look, these are some of the reasons why we can't do that. Building an enterprise image is too complex. Patching and group policy, it just doesn't work right. We need to consolidate our VDIs. We need to reduce our deployment times, but how do we get there? Consistent look and feel of our desktops, regardless of the platform. These are all the pieces that drive a successful migration and why we have to do this. Last but not least is one of my favorites. Every help desk person I work with has always reported back when I've done a project, it's an image problem. In my line of work, it's never an image problem. Because we test, we vet, and we follow the proper procedures and protocol, it's never an image problem. So let's talk about this. Building an image, thin is in, and fat is definitely not where it's at. This is no attempt to fat shame anybody. It's just the way it is with our image file. Thin is in. You want to keep it lean and mean for one reason. It's less items that we have to troubleshoot if we add a new component, if we add a new application, if we add a new hardware model. Our goal is to make sure we can easily regression test without any problems. So let's talk about this. What goes into the master image itself? We have core or enterprise level applications, Windows updates, and operating system customizations, as well as the OS itself. But it looks like I've already contradicted myself by saying one thing: core applications. I don't mean Office. I don't mean Adobe Reader. What I mean is Visual C++, .NET Framework packages. I'm talking about components that can come back and be updated via an automated asset management tool such as Config Manager. That's what I'm talking about. It's all those components that comprise your WIM file. This is not the OS deployment process as a whole. This is just the image file itself. Once again, the main reason why we want to keep it lean is because it reduces our troubleshooting regression testing. If we do it this way, we can add a new application, we can test a new application, and we can test our deployment. And if we can easily pinpoint the problem, if we added something new and it breaks something, we could take it out and see if it fixes it. You do not have that ease of use if you have a fat image. You have to regression test anything and everything possible if you have a fat image. Thin, you remove the variable, and now the problem's gone. We know what the variable is, we know what the problem is. It's easy to fix, it's easy to test. Let's talk about application packaging, second most important component after the OS. Packaging an application is very simple. It just means setting an industry standard for your applications. What is the default that the end user should get and should see when we deliver an application to their target machine? I'm not saying we're going to lock it down to that state, it's just the default that that user is going to get. First question is asked: should every application be packaged? Yes or no? My opinion, yes. That gives you standards. However, you may not have the time or the resources to package everything, but that means that you should still try to automate it and make it silent. The next piece you'll hear us talk about is an MSI. An MSI is a standard Microsoft package format which gives you industry standard and common application installation switches and options, and it's easily customizable for the industry standard, and more importantly, for your company standards. Our next piece is, can't I just script the application changes? Well, of course you can, but what happens if you get hit by a bus tomorrow and you're the guy that did the scripting? Your company is at a loss. That's where, once again, automating your changes and putting them into an industry standard such as an MSI format is much, much better. Once again, it's an industry standard, it's approved, and we want to work with it. And this way, the next person that comes in understands what you did and they can easily modify it and edit it. With the advent and adoption of Office 365, we get a lot of questions, and that first question is, what's the difference, and will my standard applications integrate with it? Office 365 Pro Plus can be installed by a downloaded package similar to any MSI or similar to any Microsoft package that came before it. The only difference is just that you are limited on customizations. But WinWord.exe and Excel.exe still function exactly as they should be. It's just a different mechanism of prepping the bits and bytes for that application package before they're delivered to the computer. That is the main difference. It has no variables when it's associated with application plugins or add-ins. It functions identically and there is no difference. Once again, the main thing you want to look at is how do we distribute the application and how can we lock it down via group policy. That is the only difference between Office 365 Pro Plus and the physical fat MSI you're used to working with. And this wouldn't be a proper demo here or a proper video without plugs. So the packaging tools that we recommend at PLA is the Flexera Admin Studio. We found it's a great tool, and it's a great way to utilize and customize your MSI packages and create MSTs as well as AppV applications. So let's talk about our hardware refresh process and migration and what exactly goes into it. As you can see, we have a column on the left, a column on the right, and a target computer in the middle. Part of the OS deployment process, as we've already talked to here, is the role-based applications. We've already talked about that. Our enterprise applications, security configurations, hardware-based software and drivers, an operating system master image, your user persona, and the individual applications. So let's actually watch those in processes, how they would come down. First thing we have to do is drop the operating system image down to the machine. Next, we have our hardware-based drivers and software, our security configuration to lock the machine down. We then roll out the enterprise applications, our role-based applications. So now this machine is configured and it's generic enough for anybody in that department. So anybody in accounting, finance, HR can log onto that machine, and it'll be that experience geared just towards them. Now comes the fun part, layering on the individual applications to make it standard for that user. And now finally their user persona, which is their favorites, their desktop background, their Outlook signature, their custom views, anything that we need that's related to an application customization or their Windows settings or desktop is pulled over in a very minimized fashion. So it's pretty easy to talk about performing a Windows 7 to Windows 10 migration, but I would much rather show you how we can do it utilizing the AppSense Desktop Now suite and our knowledge of PLA. The first thing we're going to look at is the user persona. What is the user persona and how does it function? User persona is your desktop background, your taskbar, and the other thing that makes your desktop appearance, such as your Office and Microsoft Word changes. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to change my desktop background here from something which we know is in Windows 7 to something else which we know for a fact does not exist in Windows 10. So I'm going to change it to this desktop background here. I'm going to exit out. Now you'll see this is my new desktop background. I'm going to add Microsoft Word to my taskbar. I'm going to launch Word. Came up one time, let's launch it again to make sure that everything's functional. As you can see, there are some graphical changes in here. You'll see the ruler, the grid lines are prominently displayed right now. What I'm going to change next, if this works, is I'm going to change some demo information here to call this demo. Then our initials, I'm going to put 9/24 to show today's date. I'm going to change our background to light gray. I'm going to exit out. And what I just did here is I just made some changes to an application that encompasses PowerPoint, Word, and Excel, since those are the Office family. So those are some of the elements of the profile that I'm going to focus on migrating. Something else we need to look at too, though, is it's a great opportunity to lock down your desktop as well too. Remember that security element that we talked about in the PowerPoint deck. Here we have two perfect examples of spyware or malware. You know, what somebody's going to do is they're going to try to spoof or mimic an executable, and how can we thwart that? With AppSense Application Manager, it's very simple. Here is my real command prompt here. If we look at the properties of it, our pathing is going to :Windows System 32. Here's our spoofed command prompt. It's going to :Windows App Data Roaming Command.exe. Only difference between the two files is just that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch our spoofed version. Now we get a message from AppSense that says we cannot launch this executable because it's not owned by an administrator or a trusted owner. That's how we have what's called zero-day prevention within AppSense, and this is how you can protect yourself from zero-day malware and viruses, because those executables are not allowed to run on that machine regardless of its user context or not. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to log the computer off to commit my changes to the database. And after I log the system off, AppSense is going to take the data, it's going to upload those as blobs, and then I'm going to log onto my Windows 10 machine. And after I log into the Windows 10 machine, you're going to notice the taskbar is the same, the Word settings are the same, and my desktop background will be the same. So as you can see, I've got a basic Windows 10 desktop and I'm logged on as an administrative user. To show you what's going on, I'm going to purposely and show you how I delete my profile from the machine to show you that there's nothing up our sleeve, there's no magic. I'm intentionally deleting the profile so you can guarantee that when I log on, it's using the data that's stored in the AppSense database. So now that task is complete. I'm going to sign out. Then I'm going to sign back in with my same test account that you saw me logged in as on the Windows 7 machine as. And what should happen when it comes over is that my desktop background, my taskbar, my application settings should have all ported over. So now what we're seeing here is we're seeing the standard Windows logon, applying the user policies, and now we have the standard Windows 10 startup screen. Hi, we're setting things up for you, etc. So what we can do here is while we wait, we can talk about how does this work and why do we need it. AppSense Environment Manager with personalization allows you a sort of a DR alternative to user data. The biggest problem we have and why we need AppSense with personalization is very simple. It's easy to give a user a new piece of hardware, but the hard part is setting up that machine to fit that exact user standards, whether you're migrating to a new machine, migrating operating systems, or more importantly, if they have catastrophic hardware failure. If this is a billable resource, somebody who utilizes their time and is paid for their time, you lose a lot of money by not having that user set up the way that they should have been set up previously. That's why in addition to using this for a migration purpose, it's also steady state and be great for DRs. And now, if you use the optimized deployment process we talked about, and you couple that with AppSense Desktop Now, we can give the user an easy to use desktop, easily migrated, easily worked with, and now they have no downtime. As we see here, we've got a Windows 10 machine with a Windows 7 background on it. We also have an updated taskbar here with our 3 icons that we pulled over, Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. It wouldn't be anything though unless we actually launch the applications. Let's see what we look like. So we're going to launch Word, and if everything worked, what should we see here? We've got our grid lines, we've got our ruler, and more importantly, we go to options. We also have our username and our initials here that we set today. And that ends the demo. I hope you enjoyed it.